Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Forgotten Ties. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a story that defies logic. A tale so steeped in deception and heartache that you'll question everything you thought you knew about family, trust, and the fragile nature of identity. It started on a Tuesday, a day as ordinary as any other. The sun was warm, the air was crisp, and for Dr. Alistair Finch, it was just another day of navigating the sterile halls of St. Jude's Hospital. Dr. Finch, a man in his late 50s with a quiet, observant demeanor, had dedicated his life to pediatrics, to the innocent faces and tiny hands that filled his days. He was a man of science, of facts and figures, and he believed in a world where every problem had a solution, and every truth could be uncovered with enough persistence. But this Tuesday, a truth was about to be revealed that would shatter his neatly organized world. His routine was interrupted by a new patient file, one that landed on his desk with a weight that felt heavier than paper and ink. The name on the file was Eleanor Vance, and her story, or what little of it was known, was a tragedy. She was a woman in her late 30s, a successful architect, beautiful and vibrant, who had been involved in a devastating car accident. She had been brought in unconscious, her body a map of broken bones and deep lacerations. But it wasn't the severity of her injuries that caught Dr. Finch's attention. It was the peculiar detail on her wrist, a hospital bracelet. Now, a hospital bracelet is a simple thing. It's a plastic band with a name, a date of birth, a hospital number. It's a tool for identification, a safeguard against mistakes. But Eleanor Vance's bracelet was wrong. It wasn't just a typo or a misplaced number. The name printed on it wasn't Eleanor Vance. It read Caroline Foster. Dr. Finch stared at the bracelet, then at the file, then back at the bracelet. The discrepancy was glaring. Was it a clerical error? A new nurse's mistake? He dismissed it at first. These things happened. But a nagging feeling, a cold knot of dread, began to form in his stomach. He decided to look into it. A simple phone call to admissions. The voice on the other end was confused. Eleanor Vance? We have a Caroline Foster in the system. The records matched the bracelet. Dr. Finch's heart began to beat faster. He requested the original admission forms. They were signed by a man named Arthur Vance, her husband. The name Eleanor Vance was scrawled on the form, but a closer look, an instinct born of years of experience, told him something was off. The handwriting looked forced, like a child copying a parent's signature. He went to her room. She was still unconscious, hooked up to a tangle of tubes and monitors. Her face, even with the swelling and bruises, was undeniably beautiful. Long, dark hair fanned out on the pillow. Her hand, resting on the white sheets, was slender and elegant. And on her wrist, a stark white band with the name Caroline Foster. Who was Caroline Foster? Why was this woman, who everyone believed to be Eleanor Vance, wearing her name? He tried to shake the feeling of unease, to rationalize the situation. Maybe Eleanor Vance was an alias she used for some reason? Maybe the husband made a mistake? But the more he thought about it, the less sense it made. Arthur Vance, according to the records, was a well-respected lawyer, a man of precision. He was the one who brought her in, the one who signed the forms. Surely, he wouldn't make a mistake about his own wife's name. The more Dr. Finch dug, the more the ground beneath him felt like quicksand. The patient file for Caroline Foster was thin, suspiciously so. It contained only the bare minimum of information, an address, an emergency contact number. He tried calling the number. It was disconnected. The address led to a vacant lot on the outskirts of the city. A ghost. Caroline Foster was a ghost. Meanwhile, Arthur Vance was a pillar of the community, a man known for his generosity, his sharp legal mind, and his devoted love for his wife, Eleanor. They were the golden couple, a picture-perfect marriage, a life filled with success and happiness. But as Dr. Finch stood in that sterile hospital room, a dark seed of doubt began to grow. The man who sat by her bedside, holding her hand, looked distraught, but there was a subtle, almost imperceptible tension in his shoulders, a way he avoided eye contact when the nurses spoke to him. A performance. The first crack in the perfect facade came from a nurse's casual comment. "Mr. Vance, your wife has been asking for you." She said it with a smile, a way to comfort the worried husband. But the man, Arthur Vance, froze for a split second. A flicker of something. Fear? Panic? In his eyes. She woke up? He stammered. The nurse's smile faltered. "No, sir. Not yet. I was just speaking generally." It was a simple misunderstanding, but for Dr. Finch it was a confirmation of his growing suspicion. Arthur Vance had reacted to a hypothetical situation as if it were a reality. He had expected her to be awake, to say something, to reveal something. The chilling thought settled in Dr. Finch's mind. What if she wasn't Eleanor Vance at all? What if she was Caroline Foster, and for some reason Arthur Vance needed her to be Eleanor Vance? The hospital bracelet was a silent, unblinking witness to a lie that was now sitting in room 304, unconscious and vulnerable. The story of Eleanor Vance, the successful architect, was a meticulously crafted fiction. But the story of Caroline Foster, the woman with no address and a disconnected phone number, was a terrifying blank page. The silence in the hospital room was a heavy, suffocating thing. Dr. Finch, now more detective than doctor, felt a profound sense of urgency. The mystery of the hospital bracelet was no longer just a curious anomaly. It was a screaming red flag. He knew he had to tread carefully. Arthur Vance was a powerful man, and a direct confrontation would be met with legal action, or worse. Dr. Finch's only weapon was his meticulous attention to detail, the very thing that had brought him to this point. He began his investigation in secret, using the hospital's resources to his advantage. He pulled the hospital's security footage from the day of the accident. The camera angles were limited, but he could see a figure being wheeled in on a gurney, a man following close behind, his face a mask of concern. It was Arthur Vance. The gurney was too far away to make out the details of the person on it, but Dr. Finch's eyes were drawn to the man's hands. He was clutching a small, black handbag. Not a man's wallet or keys, but a woman's handbag. It was a strange detail, but he logged it in his mind. He went to the hospital library, a quiet, dusty place where he could work undisturbed. He cross-referenced the names. Eleanor Vance. A quick search brought up dozens of articles. A rising star in the architectural world, known for her innovative designs and charitable work. He even found a few recent photos of her and Arthur at charity galas. She was stunning, a different kind of beautiful than the woman in the hospital bed. The Eleanor in the photos had striking blue eyes and light brown hair. The woman in the hospital bed had deep brown eyes and dark, almost black, hair. The difference was stark. It was undeniable. This was not Eleanor Vance. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. The woman was an imposter. But why? What was the motive? He went back to the file. He found Arthur Vance's emergency contact information and decided to try to find another way to reach him. He searched for Arthur's professional connections. He found an old friend, a fellow lawyer named Robert Sterling. He called him, pretending to be a colleague from another firm. Robert Sterling's voice was warm, but a bit guarded. Dr. Finch asked about Arthur, mentioned the recent accident. "Oh, yes," Robert said, his voice dropping slightly. "A terrible tragedy. Poor Eleanor. She's been through so much. They've been trying for a child for years, you know. Arthur was so hopeful. This is just heartbreaking. Trying for a child. A detail that hadn't been in the files. A detail that suggested a vulnerability, a desperation. Could this be the key?" Dr. Finch's mind raced. What if Eleanor Vance, the real Eleanor Vance, was no longer in the picture? And what if Arthur Vance needed to produce a woman who looked like her, or at least a woman who could pass for her to inherit something? A family fortune, perhaps? The pieces were starting to fit together in a horrifying puzzle. The car accident wasn't an accident at all. It was a staged event to introduce the new Eleanor, a woman who had been meticulously set up to replace the original. The hospital bracelet was the one mistake, the one loose thread. He needed to find the real Eleanor Vance. He knew that Arthur Vance wouldn't risk bringing her in for treatment if she was alive and well. So where was she? He went to the last known address for Caroline Foster. A vacant lot. He drove there, his heart pounding in his chest. It was an empty field, nothing but weeds and broken concrete. He walked the perimeter, his eyes scanning for any sign, any clue. He saw a small, rusted sign half buried in the weeds. It was a sign for a construction site that had been abandoned years ago. A strange detail. He went back to his car and decided to try a different approach. He ran a search for Caroline Foster on social media, on public records. Nothing. It was like she had been erased. But then he remembered something. The handbag. He had seen Arthur Vance carrying it. He went back to the security footage and zoomed in. He could see a logo, a small, distinctive monogram. He ran the image through an online search and found it. It was a brand of designer handbags. He searched for the brand and found an article about their newest collection. And then he saw it. A picture of a woman, a model holding the same handbag. She had the same long, dark hair as the woman in the hospital bed. And her name was Caroline Foster. She was a struggling model who had disappeared from the public eye a few months ago. The chilling truth began to emerge. Arthur Vance, the devoted husband, was an elaborate murderer. He had a motive, a need for a living, breathing Eleanor Vance. He found a woman who looked vaguely similar, a woman with no family, no ties, a ghost in the city, and he offered her a deal she couldn't refuse. A new life, a new identity, a chance to escape her past. But something went wrong. The plan, whatever it was, had gone sideways. The car accident wasn't a staged event to introduce her. It was the real deal. And in the chaos, the hospital staff had made a mistake. They had taken her information from her ID, which had the name Caroline Foster. The ID Arthur had forgotten to replace. The hospital bracelet was not a mistake. It was the truth. Dr. Finch felt a profound sense of horror and responsibility. He was standing on the precipice of a terrible secret. He had to act. But how? He was just a doctor. The police would never believe him without proof. He had to find the real Eleanor Vance. She was the key to everything. The last piece of the puzzle. The one witness who could expose Arthur Vance for the monster he was. The weight of the secret was crushing. Dr. Finch was now living a double life. By day, he was the calm, collected pediatrician, tending to his tiny patients. By night, he was a man consumed by a single terrifying question. Where was the real Eleanor Vance? The hospital bracelet, that simple strip of plastic, had become a lifeline, a breadcrumb trail leading him into the heart of darkness. He knew he was playing a dangerous game. Arthur Vance was a man with a lot to lose, and a man like that would not hesitate to silence anyone who stood in his way. His search led him down a path of digital breadcrumbs. He started with the model Caroline Foster. He dug deeper into her life. Her social media was sparse, but he found a few old friends from college, a few former colleagues from her modeling days. He reached out cautiously under a fake name, pretending to be a journalist working on a piece about the modeling industry. The responses were few and far between, but one stood out. An old friend named Jessica, who was now a teacher in a small town in Oregon. Jessica was more than willing to talk. She remembered Caroline as a sweet, but naive girl, always looking for a big break. She said Caroline had a secret boyfriend, a rich older man who promised her the world. She was so excited, Jessica said, her voice laced with a hint of sadness. She told me she was going to have a whole new life, a new identity. She was going to be someone else. She said her boyfriend, Arthur, was going to make all her dreams come true. Arthur. The name sent a chill down Dr. Finch's spine. The puzzle pieces were fitting together perfectly, but the picture they were forming was monstrous. He went to the police, but they were skeptical. They needed more than a hunch. They needed a body. Dr. Finch, defeated but not deterred, decided to take matters into his own hands. He knew he had to get into the Vance's house. He had to find something, anything that could prove his theory. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but he had no other choice. He waited for a day when Arthur Vance was at the hospital. Then he drove to the Vance estate, a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of the city. He pretended to be an old family friend, a man from a charity that Eleanor had worked with. He charmed the security guard, a young, impressionable man who knew nothing of the house's dark secrets. He walked through the front door, his heart hammering in his chest. The house was a museum of a perfect life. There were photos everywhere. Eleanor and Arthur on their wedding day, laughing on a beach, posing in front of famous landmarks. It was all a lie. Dr. Finch felt a surge of nausea. He walked through the rooms, his eyes scanning for anything out of place. He went to the study, a massive room with mahogany shelves and leather-bound books. He pulled a few books from the shelves, hoping to find a hidden safe or a false back. Nothing. He was about to give up when he noticed a strange book on the bottom shelf. It was an old atlas, worn and faded. He pulled it out and the back cover fell open. Inside, tucked away in a hollowed-out compartment, was a journal. Eleanor Vance's journal. He quickly scanned the pages. The handwriting was elegant, beautiful, and filled with a sense of joy and love. She wrote about her life, her dreams, her love for Arthur. But as he turned the pages, the tone shifted. The entries became darker, filled with a growing sense of dread. She wrote about Arthur's controlling behavior, his possessiveness. She wrote about how he was obsessed with having a child, how he grew angry and distant when she couldn't get pregnant. And then he found it, the last entry. It was dated 2 months ago. He told me he found a way to have a baby without me. I don't understand. I'm scared. I don't know what he's planning. The page was torn, the next entry missing. Dr. Finch's hands trembled. He had found it. The motive. The proof. Arthur Vance wasn't a heartbroken husband. He was a monster who had kidnapped his own wife, perhaps even murdered her, all because she couldn't give him a child. He replaced her with a woman who he thought would do his bidding, a woman who was a blank slate, a woman who could be molded into the perfect mother, the perfect wife. The accident had foiled his plan, but it hadn't stopped him. He was still trying to maintain the charade, still pretending the woman in the hospital bed was his beloved wife. He heard a car pulling into the driveway. Arthur Vance was back. Dr. Finch knew he had to get out. He quickly put the journal back, a small piece of paper with a phone number tucked into his pocket. He ran, his heart pounding, his mind racing. He had a new lead, a number, person, a chance to find the real Eleanor Vance. The number was written on the last torn page of the journal. He had to be a family member, a friend. He had to know something. Dr. Finch knew his time was running out. He was no longer just a spectator. He was a player in a deadly game. The call was a long shot. Dr. Finch, sitting in his car a few blocks away from the Vance mansion, dialed the number he had found in the journal. The phone rang once, twice, and then a woman's voice answered, her tone hesitant and weary. "Hello. My name is Dr. Finch. I'm calling from St. Jude's Hospital. I believe I have some information you might want to hear about Eleanor Vance." The name hit her like a lightning bolt. Eleanor? Is she okay? "I can't disclose that information, but I need to ask you something. Who are you to her?" "I'm Margaret, her sister." Her voice broke. "We haven't heard from her in weeks. Arthur told us she was traveling, that she needed some time to herself. We were so worried. He wouldn't let us talk to her." Dr. Finch's gut twisted. Arthur hadn't just replaced Eleanor. He had isolated her, cut her off from her family. "Margaret, I need you to listen to me very carefully. The woman in the hospital is not your sister. There's a woman named Caroline Foster. Your sister is missing. I think Arthur has done something to her." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "What are you talking about?" Margaret's voice was a whisper, a mix of disbelief and dawning horror. "I can't explain everything now. I'll need you to come to the hospital. But you have to be discreet. Arthur is there, and he can't know you're coming." Margaret, a woman who loved her sister fiercely, didn't hesitate. She was on a plane from Florida the next day. Dr. Finch met her at the hospital, and together they went to see the woman in room 304. Margaret looked at the unconscious woman on the bed, her face a mask of grief and confusion. "That's not Eleanor," she said, her voice shaking. "Her eyes. Eleanor has blue eyes. And her hair. Eleanor's hair is light brown." The confirmation was a gut punch. Dr. Finch finally had an ally. He told Margaret everything, about the journal, about his suspicions, about the desperate lengths Arthur had gone to. He showed her the hospital bracelet, the name Caroline Foster, a stark, damning piece of evidence. Margaret, a woman consumed by a newfound rage and terror, called the police. This time, with her as a witness and Dr. Finch's evidence, they took the case seriously. The police descended on the Vance mansion. They found a hidden room in the basement, a soundproofed, dark room. And in the center of the room, on a small bed, was Eleanor Vance. She was alive, but barely. She was frail, starved, and terrified. She had been held captive for months, a prisoner in her own home, all because she couldn't give her husband a child. The truth exploded in the news. The perfect marriage, the golden couple, was a lie. Arthur Vance was arrested, a man so consumed by his own desire for a family that he was willing to destroy lives to get what he wanted. He confessed to everything, to hiring Caroline, a desperate, vulnerable young woman, and to imprisoning his wife. The car accident, he admitted, was a last-minute decision. He was going to stage a disappearance, but the accident offered a new opportunity, a public tragedy to explain his wife's new look. He had planned to have Caroline get plastic surgery to look more like Eleanor once she recovered. But the hospital bracelet, that one tiny detail, had been his undoing. As for Caroline Foster, she eventually woke up. She was terrified, confused, and filled with remorse. She had no idea what Arthur had done to Eleanor. She had been led to believe that Eleanor had run away, that she was just stepping in to help a grieving man. The police cleared her of any wrongdoing. She eventually went into a witness protection program, her life a cautionary tale of a young woman's desperate wish for a new beginning. Eleanor Vance, with the help of her sister, slowly recovered. She was a survivor. She eventually went back to her work, a new fire in her eyes, a new purpose in her heart. Dr. Finch, a man who had gone from a simple pediatrician to a detective, went back to his life, but he was forever changed. He learned that the world was not always a place of simple truths. Sometimes, the most terrifying lies were the ones hidden in plain sight, on a simple plastic band, a hospital bracelet that didn't match her name. And that, my friends, is a story that proves that even in the most ordinary of places, in the sterile halls of a hospital, a single misplaced detail can unravel a web of deceit and reveal a truth more terrifying than any fiction. If you were as captivated by this story as I was, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the Forgotten Ties channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the human heart of darkness. Until then, stay safe and remember to always look closer.